Jace-tunnell here. Check out what I got today. I got a mantis shrimp. They're also known as sea lice. That's what fishermen use them as, or that's what they call them. They use them for fishing bait. Now, these suckers are dangerous. The other thing they call them is a thumb splitter, and it's just as you imagine. They've got these arms, appendages up here that they look like a mantis. They're kind of angled over, but they've got spears on them, and they can spear those. So that's how they get their food. This one, ooh, look, he's got his mantis appendage out right now, and then if he flips that out, that's where he's got the spine. And then they've also got these flaps at the bottom. So they live in tubes. They have a tube that comes out. There's two openings to it. They can circulate water through there with these flaps that they have on their tail area. And then they've actually got spikes on their tail, and those, it can flap up and get you as well. So these things, for handling anyway, are really dangerous. But it's a really cool animal. They've got these really bright green eyes that they're on stalks, and they can actually move them independently of one another. There's actually 25 species in the Gulf of Mexico of these mantis shrimp. There's over 500 worldwide, so there's a lot of them. They're mostly nocturnal, and they live in their burrows for almost their entire life. So that burrow I was talking to you about that had, one on either side, they can hang out at the top of that, and then whenever a fish, crab, or shrimp, which is their main food item, whenever those come over, they can reach out and grab them, because they're hunters. They're carnivorous, meat eaters. So some of the main fish, reason that they are used is for fishing bait. And so people use them for catching black drum. They use them for catching pompano. Those are the main things why you would get them. Now, something else interesting about these is that the female is larger than the male. And then they can live up to 3 years of age. Really hardy. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking, can we eat it? Yes, people do eat these. It hadn't really caught on in the U.S. yet, but countries like Asia, yes, they do eat these. So that's something for you to think about. Maybe not just use them for bait, but might be able to eat them. Now, these are super hardy. So compared to shrimp, where it's hard to keep them alive, because these really aren't a shrimp, and they're really not mantis either. So their name of mantis shrimp is kind of deceiving, but it's a crustacean. Now, I want to be I don't know everything about these shrimp, these mantis shrimp. So what I want to do is, we've got an expert that works on benthic organisms. And so benthic organisms are animals that live on the bottom. His name is Dr. Paul Montagna. I want to take one of these to him, and let's ask him his thoughts on these shrimp. Plus, I'd like to hear if anyone is studying these, and maybe what other research he has going on at the Heart Research. So let's go back up to the Heart Research Institute and find out more about this organism. Okay. So we're here at the Heart Research Institute. Let's go into the lab. Let's talk to Dr. Paul Montagna, who's an expert at organisms that are living on the ground. Let's go into his lab and talk to him about these mantis shrimp. Because since he's the expert, he's going to tell us stuff that we don't know, and I love that type of stuff. Let's go.
So I'm Paul Montagna. I'm the Endowed Chair for Hydroecology here at the Heart Research Institute. And one of the things we focus on is benthic organisms, which are little animals that live in the bottom of the sea. They like to live in mud, sand, and sometimes on top of rocks. We call the ones that live on rocks epifauna. The ones that live in the mud we call infauna. But today what we have is a real interesting little creature called a mantis shrimp. Some people call them sea lice. And as you can see from our two specimens here, luckily they're dead, because these things are some of the most voracious predators you'll find on the bottom. They dig holes in the mud or in the sand, and they sit there with their eyes kind of out like this. And all of a sudden, if a shrimp or a fish or something goes by, they take this wicked arm and they literally spear. They can literally spear a fish as it swims by. And these don't look like much right now, but trust me, these guys are voracious predators. I can remember once diving and coming across a mantis shrimp hole in the ground in the sediment, and surrounding it were, I couldn't believe how many dead bodies there were, dead clamshells, fish bones. They're just absolutely voracious predators, and there aren't very many invertebrates that can do that. They're very large. For invertebrates, a lot of the things we work with are like maybe the size of my thumbnail, and you can see these things are quite large. They're about the size of table shrimp in a way, and in fact, in some parts of the world, they're actually eaten. In Texas, they're a very common bait fish. And you can go to the local bait stores, and if you ask them for squilla, which is the scientific name, they won't know what you mean. Some people call them mantis shrimp, some people call them snapping shrimp, because when they're extending that arm, they can hit things. And sometimes when you're in the water and you're diving and you're beneath the surface, you can hear this constant, and that's these mantis shrimp snapping those arms and, you know, running it up against like a hard shell of a clam or something they found. And they use this little big broad, we call it a telson or a tail, and they just literally do this and they dig into the sand like that. And that's how they dig down. Cute little guys. One of the things we do in our lab is we study the diversity of benthic or bottom dwelling organisms. And the reason why we like to study diversity is because diversity is a great indicator of ecosystem health. For example, if there's a disturbance in an environment, the sensitive species will either disappear or go down a little bit. The tolerant species will stay the same or actually increase. So the relative change in the diversity is a very strong indicator of ecosystem health. And one of my favorite indicator species are the mollusks. And here's a good example of some of the things that build calcium carbonate shells along the Texas coast. This one, of course, is not a mollusk. This is a stony coral, but we find them attached to the bottom like this, and they just kind of live on the bottom of the sea. This is a mollusk, but it's not what you think it is. This is the inner shell of something called a cuttlefish, and it's a lot like a squid. And believe it or not, squids are mollusks too. And so most mollusks have shells on the outside, like the clammy things, the limpets, which are like a snail. And here's another snail, the lightning whelk. In fact, the lightning whelk, this is a little baby one. This is one of my favorite because it's the Texas state shell. Normally, they can get up to a foot in size, by the way, so this is a small one. And here's another one of my favorite snails. It's called the fighting conch. And the reason it's called a fighting conch is because it's a voracious predator. It will literally wrap its arms and legs around a clamshell or a mussel or something like that and pry it apart and stick its mouth inside the shell and actually eat it from the inside out. Another one of my favorites is the pen shell. Now again, this is a mini one. These things live in the mud about like that. So imagine the table is the mud, surface of the mud. That's about what would be sticking out of the mud. And then they would filter feed from their mouth parts that are hanging out on top. And these things can also get to be about a foot long. They can be quite deep in the mud. This gastropod is what we call a limpet. And they live on rocks. They would live just like this, you know, crawl around the surface of rocks, suck up the green scum and the algae and all the things that are living on the rocks. And then, of course, there are the bivalves. The bivalves, the most famous ones are oysters. You probably eat oysters, but we have this angel wing scallop over here, which is common around here. We have this cockle kind of a thing with all kinds of interesting spines on it. And here's another coyote or cockle kind of a shell. And they're very pretty, and that's why I like them. And it's always fun to go walking the beaches, walking the bays, and looking for shells, picking up, collecting, building a collection of pretty little things you can put on your shelf. I have tons at home, by the way. And again, here's another one of my favorites, the olive shell. Doesn't look like much, but boy, this is another voracious predator. He crawls around. He'll attack these bivalves that are sitting by themselves, or maybe one of these pin shells will go up and try and eat it from the inside out. Anyway, my favorite little things that live in the mud.
Okay, man, how cool was that? I had no idea. You know, I knew that they hunted, you know, for their fish, snails, shrimp, you know, crabs, all that kind of stuff. I had no idea how extensive it is and how cool that organism is. So, and I'm glad to see that Dr. Paul Montagna does all that other great work, especially like seashells. Who doesn't like seashells? Hey, beachcombers all like seashells. So some great work that Dr. Paul Montagna is doing, and so we'll talk to you next time. Bye. Jace Tunnel here. Man, I got something cool to talk to you about today. Stuff that's been washing up. People have been calling us saying, oh, we got some kind of egg casings or something like that. Or they're some type of jelly. Well, they're partly right. These are a jelly. These are clinging jellyfish. They look like little gelatinous transparent blobs all along the high tide line, and they're washing in by the thousands. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. And actually the scientific name is Neopsis backii, but that's why we call them clinging jellyfish. They're easier to talk about that way. Now I'm going to actually take these, and I brought a little glass with me, and I always do that in case I find something like this. It's hard to identify what these are unless you put them in the water. And so let's put these in the water so that we can correctly identify them. And I can tell you the difference between some of the other things that look very similar to this, that sometimes we have washing up, versus, you know, what these clinging jellyfish look like. Now, since I've been going along and picking these up, because the best way to be able to figure out what kind they are is actually to be able to put them in water, because then they open up. You can see if they have tentacles. You can see a lot of their structures that you can't see if they're just washed up in the sand and they look like a clear, transparent blob, which is what they are, transparent, gelatinous blob, basically. But when you put these in, you start seeing all the detail to them, and that makes them really interesting, and to where you can identify what species they are. So when I first pick them up, I have this glass jar here. I will put them in there, and they basically disappear because they're transparent, so you can't see them. Okay, I got them now in the jar, and you can see how they're pulsating around, which is how they move within the water column. Now these things are found throughout the Gulf of Mexico and in cooler waters. And so right about now, you know, waters are warming up, they basically disappear. You won't see them again until the waters start cooling down, probably around November. But November through March, this is probably one of the most common jellies that you'll find washed up. And every year we get these washing up. And people call them all different kinds of things. They call them salps, which salps do look very similar whenever they're up on the water line, but salps have a digestive dot inside of them, so it's a little black dot, so that's how you can tell the difference if you're not going to actually put it in water. The other is sea gooseberry. Sea gooseberries they're ctenophores, so they actually have all these little cilia that go around them. These actually, they look like, in easy terms to be able to see what they look like, is like a cabbage head jellyfish. And so you know how it kind of moves like this? Looks very similar to that. They're transparent, gelatinous, and how you can tell the difference between those other jellies and this one is it has a little X inside of it. And that X that's within the bell of it is actually the gonad system. Now, another thing that is pretty interesting about these is that whenever you look really close, and I can't even see this when I'm looking at it right now, but whenever I put my phone up to it, which is how I get these close-up shots, you can actually see tentacles on it. So they have 4 different clusters on the bottom of their bell that have tentacles that come off of it. And that is how they're able to feed on plankton. Now, these things can be found in the open ocean, so obviously the Gulf, that's why they're being pushed up, but they can also be found in the bay. The max size of these things is 1/2 inch. So, you know, every year we get people saying, oh, we got all these little bitty, you know, egg casings or something like that. They're real small, so they must be like eggs. But no, actually they're jellies, and but the max size can only be like 1/2 inch. So these things are hard to spot. They're washing in right now by the hundreds of them, I'd say, because in an area I probably walked a good 50 feet and found about 10 of them. So, you know, go that over miles and miles of the Texas coastline and you're going to find thousands and thousands of them. So that's it for the clinging jellyfish. Hopefully you learned something new this week, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of Beachcombing. Bye. Okay, Jace-tunnell here. Oh man, I'm excited about today. Ooh, let's see what we got here. Oh, okay, hey buddy, hey buddy. Whoa! Whoa! Yeah! Okay, I'm excited today because we get to talk to you about a blue land crab. Man, this sucker is strong. Let's see. Not sure if he can get me. Okay, can you see this thing? Beautiful, beautiful blue, little bit of purple. One big claw, one little claw. These things are pretty amazing. Let's see if I can get a little closer for you. These things, they burrow. You don't see them that often at the beach. I see them maybe a couple times a year, but they burrow like 5 feet in the ground, and they stay in that burrow most of the time. Like in the spring and summer during heavy rains or something like that, you'll get like a little migration of them. If you have them in your area, they're always, you know, within 5 miles of the coast. They can be found around the Gulf of Mexico, even all the way down to Brazil. And so, you know, they can be common in certain areas. So these, you might be looking at this claw and be like, what? Why are the claws different sizes? Well, they can regenerate these things. So if one falls off, another one grows back. And people do eat these. So people eat the claws and the legs. I mean, look how big this thing is. It's huge. And I'm really impressed with the color. The real, it's kind of purple. Look at that, watch the eyes here. Let's see if you can see that. You see that? The eyes go into these sockets to protect it. And then, whoop, bringing them back up so it can check me out. Let's see, the females, so once they come out, the females anyway, they go down to the water, and that's where they lay their eggs. And they can actually lay 300 to 700,000 eggs. That's a lot of eggs. Now, this is not to be confused with the blue crab. So blue crab has a very different shape. You actually hold them a little bit different. Like, I would not be holding a blue crab up this high because it would be able to get me. I usually hold it on the back. backside of it. These are omnivorous, so they go around, they can eat plants, they can actually eat insects and stuff like that that they find. They can actually eat each other, so they're cannibalistic. So if they find a dead one, you know, laying around or something, they can actually go and eat it. We have a lot of these if you look around in the Corpus Christi area. So I'm near Port Aransas right now, but in Corpus Christi, there's the Oso Bay. There is a big population of them, especially around the Texas A&M Corpus Christi campus. Man, we'll get a heavy rain like in the summertime, and we'll get hundreds of these just coming out into the parking lot. And so that's sort of a sight to see and something to look forward to if you actually want to see these things. They can molt up to 60 times. And they live up to about 15 years. So that's pretty long time, you think, for a crab. They can actually cap their holes to protect them. Okay, so with that, I think that's about all. I really just wanted to show y'all you know, what this thing is. And let me see if I can set it down and see if it runs away or see what it does. Whoop. Is it? Woo-hoo-hoo! Woo! Ooh, okay. Now, normally what I say is, you know, don't mess with wildlife. I'm just trying to educate y'all here on what this thing's about. And whoa, look at him. That's the defense mechanism. So they have their claws up like this to make them look big. But they can actually have a pretty good bite on there too. Okay, we'll let this guy go. We'll see you next time. Jace-tunnell here. Today, we're going to be talking to you about the man-o-war. And one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to actually pick this thing up. I've got a piece of trash I found on the beach over here. I'm going to scoop it up and I'm going to put it in the water so that we can get a closer look. Now, you might have heard these things called a blue bottle. Why? Because you can easily see that it's got a blue top on it. It's actually a gas-filled bladder on top of there that has carbon monoxide and air. Now, there's actually 4 parts. This isn't a true jellyfish. So true jellyfish, what you have is one organism and it kind of pulsates and it can go through the water that way. This cannot do that. And so it's actually 4 different organisms living together. We call those polyps. It has a top polyp, which is the gas-filled bladder. It's got the tentacles. Then it has feeding parts to it, and then a reproductive polyp. So it's got those 4 parts that make up this one animal that lives together so it can survive. Now this one, look, it's actually moving. Now the only part you'd ever want to touch on this, and maybe not even that, is this bladder. Because if you touch this, it's fine, like if it's in the water and stuff. And look, it's I don't know if you can see this, but it's like blowing up whenever I touch it. But it could actually, since it's been washed up on the beach, it could actually have tentacles on top of it, so it could sting you. Now, I have made a video like this before a couple years ago, and after I made the video, I stood up and I was stung all over my belly. And the reason for that is because, let me show you this. You see all these tentacles? So all these tentacles right here, they wash all over the sand, and the nematocysts, which are the stinging cells, can actually spread all around here. So even though you say, oh, there's the animal, you know, I can't get stung, you actually can. And the sting is pretty bad. It's by these little stinging cells that are located all over the tentacles here, and they're called nematocysts, and they're spring-loaded, and so they shoot out whenever they touch you. And it puts out a venom to you. And man, I'll tell you what, it is painful. And the only way to really reduce the amount of pain is 2 things. Is you can put vinegar on it or warm water. Okay, so I can already feel the stings on my belly from laying down right here. Obviously the water has rubbed all these tentacles around, so some of the stinging cells come off. And actually this thing can sting for more than just on here. So it's laid up here, it's still alive, it's kind of fresh. But even days after this, those tentacles, they will start drying up, but it can still sting. So even though it looks like it's dead or something like that, don't touch it. Now I got a little piece of, it looks like a broken bucket I found over on the beach, higher up on the beach. I'm gonna try to scoop this thing up. And the other thing I found is spaghetti monsters. I found about 6 of them just in this little area. So I put those in here. So let's see what we can do. Look at those tentacles coming up on there. Whee, man. Okay. Let's see if I can get out to where it could float here. Get some of the, oh man, this is actually really pretty. I'm gonna give y'all some close-up shots here. Now you definitely wouldn't want to touch this afterwards either, because now that's contaminated, and I'm sure that there are tentacles all over that. Okay, so let's look here. Let me see if I can get the right angle. So you got your gas-filled float up here. Now, you might be wondering, ooh, look at that. Look at the colors, blue, green, purple, and you just see the massive amount of tentacles down there. Let me see if I can get some of the sand to fall out of there so we can get a real good look at this. These are found all over the world. Look at it, it's kind of moving around. It's got its muscles in there that can make it shift. Now this top part is supposed to act like a sail so that it uses the ocean currents. Look, there's a spaghetti model, spaghetti monster right next to it there. It uses the ocean currents and the wind to be able to move around the ocean. Now these tentacles, they only look like they're about 1 foot long, right? Well, a man-o-war this size will actually have tentacles that could go out maybe 60 feet, 90 feet is what the real big ones can go out to. So if you're ever out in the water and you see this man-o-war, and you're gonna wanna avoid the bubble, part for sure, because there's tentacles under that. But know this, whichever way the ocean current is going, those tentacles will be behind it. And depending on the size of the animal, they could be up to 90 feet behind it. So that is something scary to think about, right? Jeez. Okay. What are some other things here? What do they eat? They eat fish. And let me see if I can put this down over here. Man, I guess I touched some of the tentacles because my fingers are... Those things don't feel good, and it can hurt for 3 to, how can we put this here? It can hurt from 1 to 3 hours. Wow. Some other things. They feed on fish. So you can imagine if little fish swimming around in there. The tentacles and the venom actually kill the fish. So, and they have hundreds of mouths. So they can grab those fish, consume them whole, and then it goes to the digestive polyp and then feeds on it. What eats on these? Okay, loggerhead sea turtles is probably one of their main organisms that feed on, the main animals. Blue dragons, we've talked about blue dragons before. Those are the nudibranchs. They're the sea slugs. They feed on them. They feed on the tentacles. Oh, sea snail, that was the other one. So lots of times, especially in the springtime, we'll get this influx of different animals coming in because of the southeast winds, just because of the time of the year. So we'll get the man-o-wars, blue buttons, by-the-wind sailors, these spaghetti monsters here, but also the purple storm snail. And those things, they blow bubbles up to where they can float, and then they can feed on animals like this. Now, one thing that you're going to see that it does is it actually has like this muscles to it, and it can spin around, and it can also like lift its bubble up, and it can try to direct which way the ocean currents and wind is taking it with that. And so I'll try to get a close-up look here of it spinning around. You will see where its tentacles are actually pulling up, so if it feels that there is something that it can eat, it will pull up to where it can go up to the digestive system. So these can live for about a year, and they can travel thousands of miles. You know, if they get in the right current and the right wind conditions and everything, they can travel for thousands of miles. So my number one thing for y'all watching this is they are beautiful. I always take photos and everything. I suggest you do the same when you see them. Leave them alone. Don't try to step on them, pop them, because they will sting. So with that, that's it for this episode of Beachcombing. Hope you enjoyed the siphonophore, the blue bottle, also called the man-o-war. Bye.